if you want, we will record it. There you are. You are recording now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me welcome you both here. You are the Cavatina duo, and I should have learned how to pronounce your names correctly before I introduced you. Why don't you tell me how your names are sounded? You're from Spain, are you not, Eugenia?
Yes, my name is Eugenia. In the Spanish way, Eugenia Moliner, and
I'm Denis Azabagic.
Okay, Spanish I've learned, Bosnian I have not, so I'll let you pronounce your name. I have to start out by saying that I was interested in learning more about your work just by how charmed I was by the recording that we reviewed. What was it, 2 years ago now?
was maybe 3 or 4.
That was your
Time flies.
That was your last project before the current one.
That's
But
correct.
before we come to that, give me a little background about how you got together. You probably told this story 100 times, but was it a question of you wanting to marry the flute to the guitar, or was it that the guitar and the flute came together because you got married? Which was it?
So no, when we met, we didn't think at that moment at all we would have a duo. And even when we got married, we weren't thinking about that seriously. So we met when we were students in Rotterdam. I went there to study with the principal flutist of the Rotterdam Philharmonic, Jo Hagen. And Dennis went to Rotterdam because he had a family member, an aunt. And that was the beginning of the Bosnian War. And his parents just sent him there to avoid being drafted. He was studying at the time in the academy in Zagreb, and that was his intention to continue study there. But they told him, you know, we are gonna send you to Holland, and we are going to see how the situation develops to see if you can come back or you can stay there. And so we met as a student, and we were introduced by a common friend who was also a guitarist, and the rest is history. So we started playing together much later. It was not.
This was at Codarts?
Codarts, that's right. At that time was called Rotterdam's Conservatorium.
It was. I was there. I studied Bansuri with Hari Prasad Chaurasia.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We know Hari Prasad Chaurasia. I mean, I had a roommate, and later on we had a roommate who studied with him. She was a student of Hari Prasad.
Yeah.
He played the flute the other way around. Instead of like this, he played like this.
There's a wonderful story about that, but I'll tell you later about why he does that.
I know the story. I know everything about him because I was very interested on his music. Yeah. And when I was with my roommate, when we lived together for almost 2 years, Andrea and us, I would ask her so many questions, and I was completely in love with Indian culture, Indian music, of course, Indian food. And who would have told me then that so many years later we would end up going so much to India like we did and having fantastic friends from India. Well, I know about Hari Prasad.
He was here last summer for his 80th birthday tour, and we met again. Hadn't been for a while, but we'll talk about Hari G a bit later on. And I'm getting messages coming onto my screen that I don't want there, but that's the internet for you. But anyway, so how did it start to come to? Obviously, you're together, and you are a flutist and a guitarist. You must play together just for the fun at some point before you.
So, what happened is that I think in 1994, and let's talk about dates. I think I organized then, or in 1993, I'm not sure. There was the township of where I was from. They wanted to help me with my studies, and they wanted to give me a kind of a scholarship. And they told me, you know, why don't you come play a concert, and then we will, you know, in exchange give you a little bit of support for your studies. So I had already done that before with a pianist. I had gone there, I played with piano, and this time I you know, I told Dennis, why don't you come with me? And we put together some pieces and we play. And we put together the history of tango, of Piazzolla. We played some, I think we played Tedesco, the Sonatina. I think we played some Vivaldi arrangement, concerto. And Dennis played some solo. I think I played some solo too. So that's how we did it. But even at that point, there was never in my mind the idea that I would end up doing a solo such a serious way, like we started doing it from 1998, you know, or 1999. I always thought that I would end up playing in orchestra and Dennis continued with his solo career, and that's it, you know.
What interests me is once you had decided, suddenly now you are, oh, we've got this thing and we're going to promote it, what your thoughts were about repertoire at that particular time. I interviewed some people that there's a review of a Naomi Giori and
Yes, we know them.
Yeah.
She contacted us for some feedback about her project, the Mozart project, I believe.
Right. I don't know if they've done another arrangement. We reviewed the first one, the Fantasy.
Yes.
But according to what she was telling me, the repertoire for flute and guitar is limited and needs to be expanded. So of all the things you've done, have you had to arrange almost everything? Or did you come across some things that were already for flute and guitar?
Well, one of the sort of like jumping off points for us was a recording of our first CD in 1998, which included all original compositions for flute and guitar. And at the time, I think our idea was to pursue that line of repertoire, to seek for original repertoire. And well, guitar, I mean, if you compare the repertoire, for example, like piano has really a vast repertoire, right? So for guitar, it's very common to do an arrangement. It's very common to do transcriptions. We have tons of Baroque transcriptions and Spanish music transcriptions of Granados and Albanese, etc. So that's not too far away from our sort of horizons. But Eugenia and I in the beginning were thinking more along, let's explore original works. And as we were playing and going to festivals and talking to composers, we were just looking for more and more pieces. And for example, one of the composers that we met was David Leisner back in 2001 in Florida, I believe, in a festival. And he told us about a piece that he wrote for flute and guitar called Acrobats. That was the first spark with which we ended up doing an album of all of his music for flute and guitar, including some pieces that combine flute, guitar, and cello, and another one flute, guitar, and clarinet. But again, all original pieces from him. Later on, we were just by being influenced from a dear friend and mentor, so to speak, Sergio Assad. He said, Dennis, Eugenia, why don't you explore your roots, from where, music of places where you come from? And that was the first push for a Balkan project.
Before that, we did Piazzolla.
Okay.
And
so go ahead.
He talked to us about arranging the Four Seasons of Piazzolla after he heard us playing the history of tango. I just wanted to add to what Dennis was saying, that one of the reasons why we felt very motivated to start commissioning new music, because like Naomi told you, there is not so much repertoire for flute and guitar. There is repertoire. There is 19th century music. You have a lot of Giuliani music. You have even composers like Noemi was talking in publishing in her new I think Matiega wrote a lot of music for flute and guitar and other combinations. Matiega Molino, even I think Sor has some music. So there is, the problem that we encounter with that is that most of the time the guitar part was not substantial enough. The guitar part was...
You're just accompanying and not part of the...
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
It was a kind of a very simple line, not all the time. Some of the pieces that Giuliani wrote can be a little bit more kind of thick and complex, but we wanted to kind of escape from that. So the first CD that we recorded, it was consistent of all original works for flute and guitar, starting from the Denisov Sonata that Edison Denisov wrote in the 1970s. Then Takemitsu, Towards the Sea, then the Spanish composers Joaquin Rodrigo and Antonio Ruiz Pipo, these little shorter pieces, of course, History of Tango. And so we did a repertoire that was very substantial in that CD in terms of both flute and guitar parts were kind of demanding, not only the flute, but the guitar as well. So we wanted to continue in that line. And I remember when we first met Sergio Assad, and he said, I'm gonna write music for you. Not only he said that, but he said, I'm going to help you with arrangements, you know, or here there is a piece. He gave us a trio for flute, guitar, and viola that he had written for some trio that he knew, some people that he knew. And we played that piece, Winter Impressions, I think was the name. And then he wanted to do the arrangements of Astor Piazzolla, the Four Seasons, and to do it from his guitarist perspective. He already had done that for solo guitar, and then he wanted to do that plus adding the flute. In this case was the different thing. So he had the substantial part on the guitar, and then he added the flute onto that. So it was such a kind of successful thing to do, and because it becomes a much kind of thicker piece, you know, and it's very challenging for both instruments to play it the way that he wrote it for us. Well, and in that same project, he was saying, okay, so what other pieces of Piazzolla you want to do? I was practicing for years already the six etudes of Astor Piazzolla for solo flute. And then I told him, you know, what would happen if you write the guitar part for this? There is no guitar, but why not? Why don't you write it? And so he ended up writing the entire solo guitar part of 3 of the etudes, and the other 3, he did it in combination with his daughter, Clarice, who is also very, very talented and successful composer. So we ended up having the 6 etudes of Piazzolla, which are longer than 20 minutes, for flute and guitar. And that was amazing. We felt like, wow. So we ended up having this album, all of Piazzolla arrangements, most of them done by him. Then continuing doing other, you know, ideas, what Dennis said about the Balkan project.
But when we come to Telemann, it's the other way around. You've got solo flute pieces. And just a few minutes earlier, I played through your recording, and then I listened to the Ron Paul version of the solo flutes. I couldn't find Manuel Pahud. Apparently he's recorded them recently. And it was interesting to hear the comparison. I don't know about the Marais. What was that really written for?
So Marie Marais was originally, he was a viola da gamba player, a virtuoso player. And he wrote it for a viola da gamba and accompaniment with theorba or harpsichord. Yeah. So the original is written for 2 instruments in D minor. It was later on that the flutist, I don't know exactly who did it and when, there is a version for solo flute in E minor rather than D minor. So, and also Marie Marais, he writes in his notes that this piece, Folias de España, can be played with the flute, the traverso of the time, and Baroque guitar. So this combination is kind of a natural combination for this kind of music.
What was on the original score? So much Baroque music has for flute or violin, that flexibility.
Yes,
What was the original score in this
The
case?
original score says viola da gamba, or flute, recorder, or oboe, or violin.
Okay.
Or even, yes, with any melodic instrument. It says melodic instrument, but it mentions the flute and it mentions the Baroque guitar.
I have to interview Michaela Petri next week.
Wonderful.
Has she made a recording on recorder? Do you know?
Yes, I know. I do. I did my research before we recorded it, and it's always a pleasure to hear her. I heard her. I heard Barthol Kaiken, who I've been listening for so many years. He's from Belgium. He's one of my idols, and of course Rachel Brown from England.
Yes.
Who I heard long time ago when she came to Rotterdam to play with the Orchestra of Enlightenment. I think she played some of the Mozart concertos long time ago, and I admire her playing as well. So I did have a little bit of background with these wonderful period instruments, so to say, the traverso and the recorder. So to get an idea about the ornaments, about the interpretations of the different fantasies.
I'm interested in the trajectory, because you went with Piazzolla, you went with Sephardic music, and
Balkan music also.
But now suddenly,
opera music.
In a way, you've come back to a little bit more traditional repertoire. Was that your thinking, to ground? Let's take a pass through the Baroque, and then next time, I can't imagine where you will go for the next project, but it's an obvious choice. But
well, it's not
what I was expecting after the Sephardic adventure.
You know what? For us, the projects has evolved as interactions with musicians evolve. So both of us refer to Sergio Assad. Again, his influence on us to record a Piazzolla album, his influence and suggestions to go and create a Balkan project, music from part of the world where I'm from. Later on, Eugenia wanted something of a Spanish origin and went far back, all the way to the 15th century, right? And to explore Sephardic music of Spain as a starting point for commissions. So every project has some ideas that are influenced by suggestions or interactions with other musicians and even friends. I mean, our going back to this current project, which is going to be released in a couple of days.
In a couple of days, yes.
July 17th. Folias and Fantasies, music of Mare and Telemann. We were dwelling for a long time on the idea of recording a Baroque CD, and what the repertoire would it be. And obviously we have Bach flute sonatas with guitar accompanying part adapted, but we were always thinking, what else? What else is there? What else can we do? And in conversation with Alan Thomas, Eugenia had this parallel idea of she just mentioned the 6 flute studies by Piazzolla, and then asking Sergio to write, and Clarice, his daughter, to write a guitar part for it. So that was, from that, there was a spin-off to Telemann Fantasies. Okay, so here there are 12 Telemann Fantasies. What if we add a guitar part? So again, crucial element for the projects, for creation of ideas, I go back to state, is collaborations and interactions with composers and musicians. So as we have collaborated with Alan Thomas, starting from Balkan project, Sephardic and opera,
But we didn't mention him about opera.
Alan lives in England. He's a guitarist and a friend. So he has composed and arranged quite a number of pieces for us. So we were talking at one point about these 12 Fantasies by Telemann, and he was very open to the idea of writing out the guitar part for those. So it turned out quite nicely, and we are very happy about it.
Yes, it's a very interesting piece. Everyone's recorded the Bach and the Handel flute sonatas. Are there as many recordings of the Telemann? I haven't really looked through.
There are. Of course, the Telemann fantasies have been recorded quite a bit, but I don't believe there are any recordings of with an ad continuo or
Right.
with an ad. I think this is the first one.
You know what? One thing I want to bring out here is, you know, you're calling us as a representative of a flute magazine,
Yeah.
right? So you are talking about flutists and the flute world and expansion of the repertoire for the flute. I mentioned my work a little bit more as a guitarist, and what I find very interesting, for example, is how our repertoire can cross. So going to one of the albums, Cavatina the Opera, it's a mixture of a standard flute pieces like Fantasy on Freischütz, right?
Or Carmen Fantasy.
Or Carmen Fantasy, for which Alan wrote a guitar part and arranged it.
He
right?
arranged the piano or adapted the piano part.
The piano part for guitar. But also, so what we are having now is that when we play for guitar circles, we are bringing this repertoire that perhaps is not that known for guitarists. On the other end, also like the piece like Variations on Mozart themes by Sohr, another piece that Alan adapted. So this is a very standard piece in the guitar repertoire that it's not very known in the flute world.
No.
So it crosses so over. So just that switch enriches each other's world, right? So and going back to this, when you say enriching the repertoire, I think just every musician, as they record projects and record albums, we are always seeking for new, and every artist, not just musician, we are always seeking for a new
source of inspirations and ideas.
And to create a new repertoire. So
freshness. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether there's a big repertoire or not. You always want fresh, new material coming in. I mean, Michaela's a wonderful example. She records all the Baroque repertoire and then commissions new works from living composers.
Exactly.
And then she did a Brazilian recording recently. So that's something. But yeah, so when I review these things, I don't really discuss anything to do with the execution or all that kind of thing, because it's on such a level that there's nothing to criticize about how you execute this music. It's all about the music itself. Well, it is for me. I'm not a flutist. Well, I am, but I mean, I'm not. That's not my focus. My doctorate is in music history and more than in performance. So that's what always attracts my interest. But I'm really curious to know what you might set your sights on. So the recording is due out in 2 days.
Yes.
So by next Monday, you should be thinking about your next project.
We are thinking of our next project since years ago.
You want to give us a hint?
Yes. So we, the last few projects that we have released have always been in pairs. Let me put it that way. So starting from the Balkan project, we released that in a 1 year period. We released the Piazzolla CD and the Balkan project CD. Then the next projects were the Sephardic Journey and Cavatina the Opera. So what I'm trying to explain by this is like very contrasty. One more traditional, like you were talking, not to say that Piazzolla is traditional, but compared to the Balkan project that was, completely new compositions, and Piazzolla pieces were already, some of them written, just rearranged. So the last project we did, the Sephardic Journey, completely new commissions, and then Cavatina the Opera, adaptations of pieces already written or for flute or for guitar. And then now we're doing Telemann. And we already have baking in the oven, not baked, but baking in the oven. Already the compositions are written and the date for the recording is set. Hopefully if this pandemic lets us go there and finish the recording and do everything. So we are doing a project based on Roma music or gypsy music from around the world.
Uh-huh.
So we have commissioned 5 pieces to 5 different composers. And again, we are collaborating with other musicians. We are doing 1 sextet or flute and guitar and string quartet, 2 trios, one with flute, flute, guitar and cello, and another one for alto flute, violin and guitar, and then 2 duos for flute and guitar. And all this music is based from gypsy or Roma music from different parts of the world, from India to Middle East, to Turkey, to Balkans, to Spain, to Brazil. So Roma people living in all these countries with the influences of these countries.
That's fantastic. I don't know of anyone who's done anything quite like that. But is most of this music formal on paper, or did you have to? Are any of them from an oral tradition, or not oral, but in you know, passed along orally?
Well, all the music, the same like with the Sephardic journey, we talked to composers and we pointed to few resources, mainly to this movie called Lachodrom, which simply traces the music, as Eugenia was saying, from Rajasthan, from India, and then its expansion across Middle East and Balkans, etc. So from what I know is that composers have used those resources, heard the music, found the themes that they like, and took those as a starting point to create their
New
own
music.
compositions.
Well,
Yes.
That's a wonderful next step that I would never have anticipated. So,
So you see, from Telemann and Marais
yeah.
to gypsy music from around the world. So
But those musics have a lot in common.
yes, they do.
Sound-wise,
Yes, they
have a
do,
lot
because
in
they
common.
were all originated in the streets as a folklore.
Yeah. So, well, it's amazing the things that you can do, and it's a wonderful combination of instruments. It's interesting that you'll be expanding to different ensembles on that recording. But
Yeah, like we did in the Sephardic journey. We just add a little bit more flair and color to the pieces by adding other instruments. And we are looking forward this time to collaborate with a different string quartet. We are going to be playing with the Pacifica Quartet. They are a very well-known string quartet here in the US. And they are recording artists of Sedir Records, which is the company we will be releasing this CD with this CD. And so our record company producer has put us together, and we are looking forward to playing with them. They are amazing.
Well, we'll have another conversation about that, hopefully. But we've got some work to do to introduce the public to Telemann and Marais, first of all. Will Django Reinhardt get a look in at some point?
Yes.
This
Django
is very
Reinhardt
interesting.
is inside of that recording
You
too.
I just talked yesterday to one of the composers from this project. Let me just name all of them that are that will be featured on this new album. So again, we have Sergio Assad, we have Clarissa Assad, we have Stacy Garup, who's our colleague and friend here in Chicago. We have Matthew Dunn, who currently resides near Lake Placid in New York, and Atanas Orkozunov, who's a Bulgarian guitar composer.
Living in Paris.
Living in Paris, really wonderful, all wonderful composers. So yesterday I spoke with Matthew Dunn because he's just about to publish this piece via publisher, I think in Canada, Productions of Oz, and was...
You said Doberman and Nippon.
I think it's the same, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's he called me yesterday. We had a conversation just to see whether we want to do last minute edits or something like that. So we need to get back to him and talk about this piece, very substantial piece, by the way, written as a tribute to another wonderful flutist who was friend of his,
Carl Perkes.
From San Antonio.
From San Antonio, Texas.
Symphony, right?
Yeah.
Orchestra. So you were mentioning Django Reinhardt. So yes, this was one of the inspirations for Matthew Dunn because he also has a strong background in jazz. So he brought those elements into first movement.
And Clarissa Sad also uses a lot of themes of Django's music and Django's arrangement. So you will hear a lot of the Roma music in France.
Fantastic. There's another connection because one of my teachers in jazz was Ali Ryerson, and she used to play in Stefan Grappelli's group. So everything goes around, as you will. Well, listen, I want to thank you both. We've got a lot more to talk about, but we're going to focus on the current project to give it a good launching, and then we'll talk some more about these future projects. And it's all very exciting, and all of it just keeps the repertoire fresh. And at some point at Flute Journal, we want to run a course for other duos on the repertoire and how to approach playing in that particular combination. Maybe you can help us with that. That'll be another conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking again shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Stay safe and well, you and all your subscribers and readers.
Yes, we wish you all the best there in the UK.
Give my best to Chicago, that toddle in town.
Thank you.
Thank you.